Hey guys, welcome back to the Kingdom Life podcast. Today we have the absolute honor and privilege of hearing from Callum Carseldine. How are you going today, sir?
Great, BB King. Good to be on the podcast, mate. I'm pumped to be here.
Excellent. Well, I've known this man for probably a bit over 10 years now. I first met Cal when I was 15 years old. I was in youth ministry, and I think I just met him when I was probably, entering in. He probably signed me in that day with a few other people. And pretty much since then, I just asked Cal to be my mentor from probably about 16. And then over that period of time, we've just been able to journey together, and you've just given me so many, nuggets of wisdom and gold. And as a result, we just, I suppose, wanted to hear a little bit of that today, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But, before that, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us, what you get up to, what does family look like, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, great to be on. And I'll reference you as BB King. That's obviously what I refer to you as. But 31, married, and got two amazing kids, BB. And I remember when we first met, just to go back to that.
Yeah.
I remember saying to my brother, hey, I'm going to lead a life group. And your brother and another young guy was going to be in the life group. And my brother knew you.
Yeah.
And my brother's like, are you sure you're ready to have Brian in your life group? Because his perception of you was like you had this amazing biblical knowledge. And I think he was either doubting me or he was really having a high opinion of himself.
I'm going to go a bit of both.
I'm going to go, high opinion of yourself. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm ready. And that obviously started a journey where we started to form a friendship. And obviously you view it as a mentorship in a way. But those were good days, and it's obviously morphed into this. So come full circle. It's great to be here. But yeah, two young kids, involved in a couple of businesses, and my day job is I'm a sales professional. Been working with the same company for 10 years. But yeah, I got married in my mid-20s, and that's kind of me.
What's the backstory behind getting married? Like, how did that all look like? When did you start dating your wife now, Tennille? Tell us maybe a little bit about what that looked like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously talking to young adults here, so I'm sure that who you end up with is top of mind. But I met Tennille through mutual friends. So my housemate at the time was dating one of her friends, and I just did a natural Instagram stalk. Saw that she was hot, and said, hey, I want to come to lunch with you and your girlfriend's friend, which was Tennille. Went to lunch, and I thought I'd impressed her. Like, I genuinely thought I'd impressed her. And apparently there's a couple of things I didn't do well, like pay for everyone's lunch. She thought I was stingy. And then I sort of followed up, which I'm okay at. I'm good at the follow-up. A couple of days later and messaged, hey, we should catch up one-on-one. She said, oh, no, I think we're going to catch up as a group. So she should have shut that down early. But then fortunately, again, God just stepped in. She started coming to City Point Church kind of regularly, and I started to get to know her. And long story short, finally got her mobile number, which was a big mistake on her end. And then we got on a date. Finished the date, BB. She got to the end of the date. I thought again I'd stepped up, done really well. She said, I think we should just be friends.
Oh, no, you got friends.
So genuinely shot down. And this is where I got some advice from Pastor Chard. And he's like, mate, you need to play hard to get. You need to go cold for 2 weeks. And fortunately, about 1.5 weeks into the 2 weeks, I was sweating bullets. And she finally said, hey, I might have made a decision too early. I think we should maybe date again. And then 7 months later, we're engaged. 11 months later, we're married. So that's the long and the short of being friend zone, a couple of times. And
so there's encouragement out there if the first date doesn't go that well, or if you're trying to find that person, that they're hopefully out there.
Yeah, mate, you stalk long enough and well enough, they'll give in.
Tip.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't the dating. We're looking at personal vision tonight. So maybe just on that theme, like, when we hear personal vision, some of our, listeners and watchers today probably maybe don't really know what that means. But like, if you could maybe share just like a little bit on that overarching theme of personal vision, what does it sort of mean to you? What does it look like?
Yeah.
If you could chat around that.
Yeah, well, I think I'll probably break it into two categories for me. Like, naturally, once you have clarity, whether it be what you want your life to look like in 1, 5 or 10 years time, you tend to have an urgency here and now. And it tends to kind of help you prioritize things. So I guess for me, if we're talking about personal vision, BB, I'd break it into two things. Like, if you start with the end in mind and get some clarity around that, it'll start to just naturally help you prioritize things and bring some urgency to now. So for me, hopefully what we can chat about is, one, how I start with the end in mind, like what I do personally, what I've been taught, and how that's helped me prioritize things along the way that have helped me, but sometimes hindered me as well. Honestly, around that. So So that's what I would say is personal vision. I'm not sure what you and them think, but
no, I think that's really good. And maybe this might be a little bit of a side note, but like if there was one resource or one, inspiring piece of content you come across or anything, like, is there been a book or, an audio or something that's like really foundational to that?
Yeah, and I think one thing I was told was there's so many books out there, but one of the
Yes.
best bits of advice I got is pick one book that really resonates with you and read it every year, like once a year. So the one book for me was The Magic of Thinking Big.
Yep.
Outside of the Bible, that's just a very it's not overly complicated. Talks about goal setting, talks about people skills, talks about thinking big.
Yep.
And that's one book, it's quite old right now. It's got a whole bunch of notes in it, but that's one book that I'll revisit each year just to re-emphasize because again, I think now as a young adult, there's so much content out there.
Yeah,
I think
there
it's
is.
good for our minds to go back to the same thing once a year.
Yeah.
So that would be what
For
I would say.
clarity, like
for clarity,
for clarity, yeah.
and just to bring you back to sort of some central themes that have carried me through. And that book for me was The Magic of Thinking Big. And I wasn't necessarily in love with reading at 14, but when my parents paid me $20 to read a book, I read a book because I wanted
there was
money.
an incentive.
Exactly.
Incentive,
so,
yep.
but that book sort of was something that I'll revisit
Cool.
most years. That helps.
Yeah. And then I suppose looking at the timeline, because that was something you mentioned, what would that look like? So say someone's just finishing school or, maybe someone's even mid-20s, like there's probably differences about what the timeline sort of looks like. But maybe if you could just give an example of like someone's, finishing school or just sort of in that season, then maybe like mid-20s, like what would the differences be and that sort of thing with the timeline?
Yeah, maybe I might unpack the timeline thing a bit more because it's not something that's obvious, right?
No.
Like generally, what my parents would do with me was they'd be go, "Hey, Cal, what's your age now?" And I'd say 18, and they'd go, "Hey, okay, in 5 years' time you're going to be 23, in 10 years' time you're going to be 28." And the point of that is my life looks very different at 23 than it does at 28. 28, I got 2 kids potentially. If this is if I'm 18, and at 23, I'm maybe graduating from uni.
Yeah.
So the point being is the idea of the timeline is it enables you just to fast forward, and then it would generally break down into a couple of categories. Like there might be, what's your family status?
Yep.
What's your kind of income? What's your study? Where's that at? So obviously, as you go through different phases of life, study maybe pulls back a bit as you go into maybe late 20s like me, and then kids start to come in. And if you can start to, again, just take your mind forward as to what you want your life to look like in 5 and 10 years' time, it just starts to influence your decisions here and now. And that helped me, if that makes a bit of sense.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And then I suppose, like, I don't know, were there any moments maybe where you felt like you heard from God about your future or calling or anything like that? Like, is there a point in time where you felt either something specific or even something like more general, or is there been any moments where like you've felt you've heard from God and you've had sort of clarity as a result of either, I know, prayer meeting or worship or something?
Yeah, well, I think one thing we were talking about earlier is the importance of getting away from your kind of normal routine. And so you can have those moments where Holy Spirit can actually get a word in. Yeah. And that's what I found for me, like when I was just in my day-to-day, whether it be study, and I might talk a bit about what my life looked like at 18 versus 23. That might be interesting. But essentially, I would, again, through counsel from my parents, take time to get away so that, I could hear from God. And I think a couple of critical times, like one, I genuinely felt on a Sunday at church when it was time to say goodbye to footy.
Yeah.
That was one for me. As well as that, I think that Tennille and I also have heard from God at certain times about our church life and what that looks like. Yeah. And I know for me as well, when it comes to my work, in terms of getting some Holy Spirit ideas as well, that's generally come from me taking time out from my normal kind of chaotic routine. So I guess if I'm talking to a young adult, I would say that people love being busy. People love saying they're busy, but I would almost thrive for those moments where you either get away for a weekend or maybe get away for a day and just maybe go to a different place. And then you'll just start to think differently. Like more practically speaking for me, maybe that looks like for me now on planes. Planes is a time for work. That's something that I'm afforded through work where, okay, I'm not at my desk. I've got a pen and paper. What's Cal and Tennille's life look like when they're 35 versus 40? And I just find that I can more easily go into the mode of just thinking creatively as opposed to if I was doing it in my office at home or so.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like you're basically saying like your environment has a pretty big impact or has an impact on maybe your creative thinking or even the ability to think big and taking you out of routine and all those sorts of things. So environment's being pretty important.
Yeah, crucial. Yeah, just to take that time out. I mean, practically speaking, at the church that we're at, we obviously have Future Hope Conference,
Yeah.
and we've done that, Sunil and I, for the last 5 years, where for 2 days we take time out to hear
Yeah.
from God, and there's been some crucial messages that I've heard from God at that conference that I don't
Yeah.
think I would have heard if I was
No.
at work on a Friday morning. I just wouldn't have. So to a young adult, I think it is difficult to take time out, especially now where we're so drawn to busy things, like to be still and sit. That's difficult.
Yeah.
So going to environments where you're almost forced, and that's what I love about, say, a Future Hope conference or any conference really, is where you're forced to kind of put the phone away and have a pen and paper and just hear from ultimately God. That helped me. Yeah.
Positioning yourself in that way.
Yeah.
That's really good. And then maybe if we could maybe speak to priorities moving forward. So, now, like, let's say you've heard from God or you have a big idea about your future. There's so many things you could do in your week, in your life, whatever. How do you then narrow down and say, like, how many priorities is a good amount of priorities? Like, is it different for everyone? Maybe, could you share a little bit on how you prioritize?
Well, I think, if I go back to when I was 18, like I was working part-time jobs, washing cars. I was working at a cinema, which is a fantastic part-time job, by the way. Cinemas is just elite. Little work for a fair payoff if I go back to those times. And that was one of my part-time job days. And then I was also at the time very much involved with footy and church. So again, in my experience, maybe 3 or 4 things. And I did a message last year, I think during COVID, which was simplify to amplify. And what I was trying to get across there is I think that young adults will get to their late 20s and often be like, geez, I just feel busy. And I feel like that's because, one, you've carried so many friendships. You got your school friends, then you got your uni friends. You're still trying to catch up with your school friends. Then you got your uni friends. And now you got your work friends. Then you got your church friends.
Family on top of that.
Family on top of that. And you got all these various commitments that you're trying to keep up with. And I think the older you get, you realize that you're better off just connecting. If I'm just talking people now, connecting with 2 or 3 people really well. So if I think about priorities, I probably, the one area that I've probably neglected and haven't had a lot of fruit in, if I use a Christian term, is probably like friendship. So for me, when I was at studying at Bond University, I would do like very little social time there, BB. Like it would be work, footy, study, and church. And like I would kind of jam pack my social time into church and footy. But I would never be doing really social stuff. And I don't look back and regret that. But at the time I just couldn't fit everything in. I couldn't. If I tried to do that, I'd be doing a bunch of things kind of okay. And then once I started work, I realized the same thing. If I was going to do full-time work plus a semi-professional football career plus a marriage, then I probably am not going to be able to have great friendships. I'm probably not going to be able to commit as much to the church as I'd like. And then once footy pulled away and we started different businesses, you just simplify in order to amplify. I think young adults struggle because they're constantly getting different things that come their way, and you're eventually going to have to kind of say.
And again, you go back though, I suppose, to your long-term vision or like where you want to be down the track. So you'd almost say if someone doesn't know where they want to go or they haven't heard from God or all those sorts of things, it's a lot easier to get busy, or even you might be more content with where you are because like you don't have the vision to go forward or like to push on. And how do you know what to prioritize if you got no personal vision? So it's definitely true, all the things that you're saying there. So and then I suppose if we move almost to time management, is that something that you have like learnt, you got skills in? Like how do you how would you manage your time based on your priorities and then your personal vision?
Well, I think again, just talking really openly about myself, like I manage time too closely. Like if I my
give us an example.
So like I could tell you what's
20-minute Zoom calls.
20-minute Zoom calls. Don't give me a half hour. Let's do 20 minutes. Let's just bang this out. We can do in 30 what we're doing 20. Generally speaking. But like I'll know what's happening in 3 weeks' time. And I think as you get older, as your life fills up, you do have to become more organized. You legitimately have to become organized. But Tilly, like my wife, she doesn't really care what's happening in 3 days' time. She just wants to know what's happening in 2 days. And how that helps is she's incredibly present when she's with people. So whilst you can get really good at time management, I find that I probably do it to the nth degree.
Yes.
But practically speaking, one thing I'll do is often just combine a few activities. So for example, like if I'm reading, I'll usually stretch. Like that's something that I've just always combined, and I'm kind of killing, two birds with one stone in that regard.
Yeah.
So that's, and then often I'll do social time as I'm exercising. So that's another thing that I might sort of intertwine again, because time's precious and I want to be with the wife and kids. So combining those two things, BB as well.
Sorry, before you go on, why stretching? Just in case people are thinking, why does this guy stretch?
Well, it's just a habit I built like during footy.
Because it's a good habit. But like, I'm thinking,
it's not a normal
I don't
habit.
stretch. Probably a lot of people don't stretch.
Yeah.
So, like,
that's a weird one. It was just because I was with football, I found that, I never got injured.
Yep.
And I found that one of the main reasons for that was because I was flexible, and I just built this habit of 10 minutes of stretching at the start of each day, and I would just intertwine reading with it. So if you think about time management as you grow as a young adult, I don't know, if you were looking at Instagram, you could go for a walk as you look at Instagram, and you're getting two things done at once. That's what I'll often do at the end of the day. I got a whole bunch of thoughts in my mind. I'll just jot them down as I'm on the treadmill, and I'm kind of doing two things at once.
Yeah.
Because if I do those two things separately, then I'm far out of more time away from the kids and Tilly. So they're just some practical time management stuff.
Yeah, no, that's good. And then, I mean, we're probably going to circle back again there, but like for you now, what are like the most important things to you, like in terms of like what's the best uses of your time, if you would consider it that way?
Yeah, I think a couple of things
you can't say everything.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely won't. I would say that like I love sport.
Yeah, okay.
But I'd love to follow and know exactly what's going on in the NFL, the AFL, the NBA. Like I'd love to know what's on the cricket.
Yeah.
But I'm just AFL. I can't keep up with all of it. So that's one thing that I've kind of stripped back and
simplified.
Just go to the Lions. Go to the Brisbane Lions. That's all that matters. And Tottenham Spurs for a few others out there. But I think now I've lost my train of thought because I'm thinking about the Spurs. But
your most important.
The most important.
Yeah.
I think what's never changed is absolutely prioritizing my time with God, like my relationship with God.
Yeah.
Second thing is my health. I find if my health's strong, I can literally launch and do a whole bunch of other things. So I read this great book, which was The One Thing. And it was basically just highlighting, hey, if you could do one thing in the day, or if you get one thing right in your life, if you could distill it down to one thing, what would that be? And I know for me, if I look back and look forward, the one thing that's going to set me up, apart from my relationship with God, is good health. Because if I'm healthy, I'm going to be able to be a great dad. I'm going to have the energy to grow business. I'm going to have the energy to disciple people. So I think two things that have never changed, BB, is absolutely my relationship with God and prioritizing that time with Him and with other believers. And then, just making sure my health's like good and on track. Like right now, I'd love to go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week, but I'm a dad of 2. Yeah. So that's just a season. Like I know you're in a season right now where perhaps at work, I'm absolutely striving to get the next promotion. And we've spoken about that. Yeah. But right now your life's very busy, and not busy, I don't like that word, but there's a lot going on from a young adult ministry perspective. And like you're pushing there and you're kind of not plateauing here, but you're just keeping that kind of cruising a little bit, right? And then there'll be a time where maybe that'll shift. Yeah. Yeah. And then you got a bubble on the way, and then all of a sudden maybe something else has to drop back. But two things that remain fundamental, whether I'm 18, 25, 30, I find is, my relationship with God and being around those fellow believers and my health. Like if those two things are right, I can launch into whatever those things are. But like I said, at 18, I was probably obsessed with wanting to find like a girlfriend and a wife. And then once I found God, I realized, geez, I got to sort myself out first. And then I just literally kind of almost didn't forget about that. But then at 24, I met Neil and I went on a journey where I just got myself right. And I feel like I became the man that Tennille was eventually going to be attracted to. But it wasn't a priority in that time to necessarily find a wife. I was prioritized on
your goals,
my goals and my football, and sort of getting myself in a really good place with God. And then all of a sudden in my mid-20s now I'm combining my life with Tennille's, and things had to strip away. So don't know where we got to. I don't know what the question was, baby. But
the most important things, and I think you gave me everything in the end.
Yeah, sure.
I'm kidding. Maybe goal setting, because you are a bit of a goal setting king. Any tips for people out there that maybe are setting goals or like want to improve how they set goals. Like, yeah, are there any hacks or anything that
Yeah.
you'd love just to share on that?
Again, I wouldn't start setting goals until you kind of have the end in mind. So
Yes. Yeah.
so I'm disciplined because, and one of my favorite sayings is clarity brings sense of urgency. So the reason people, I think, procrastinate is because they don't have clarity about where they're going in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
So therefore it's easy to procrastinate because they don't understand the cost of procrastinating. So for me, always start before you set goals, take the time to just get a little bit of clarity, just jot down some thoughts on
Yeah.
what life looks like in 5, 10 years. And I think once you got that, you'll start to then distill it down into, hey, in the next 6 or 12 months. So one thing
Yeah.
that my parents did with me, and this is why I can't take a lot of credit at all, is because I just grew up in an environment where my parents enabled this. But we do this thing called Best Year Yet, BB.
Yep.
And it was a book. I'm not saying it's the best book. It's just what worked for us.
Yep.
Commitment to the strategy is more than the strategy, in my experience. Just commit to a strategy and stick to it. And this book, what we would do at the start of each year is we'd spend probably half a day kind of almost reflecting on the past year. What were our achievements? What were our disappointments?
Yeah.
What were our lessons learned? And then what this book would sort of advise you to do is just break your life into your roles. So for example, one role that I had was I was my own personal coach. So what was I going to do? I was a brother, as much as I don't like my brother. Just jokes. And then I've got
Love you, Brycey.
Love you, Brycey. I'm obviously a son. I'm a friend. I'm a business person.
Yeah.
So broke it down into those areas. And then what Best Year Yet would do is it would say, hey, just write down 3 or 4 goals for each. Now, you would end up, after brainstorming, and this is the idea, you kind of start with multiple ideas and you distill it down into what's most important, right?
Yeah.
So this is what we would do, BB. In that half day, we'd go through out a whole bunch of goals as a brother, as a business person, as a Christian, all that. And then you'd bring it down to 10.
Yep.
Just 10, what's the most important goals? And we'd write them down. And then for the first 20 or so days, you would write them morning and night just to reiterate it into your mind. And then just what I do each morning as I read and stretch, which is weird, I'll just have a glance over the goals. So that's kind of what I'll do. And then, naturally some of them I'll adjust throughout the year, but it's probably one big block at the start of the year where Tilly and I'll take time out to kind of work out what we're doing for the year. And if I just play on that a bit further, BB, it's quite difficult, I think, to set like results orientated goals because sometimes things are outside our control, right?
Yeah.
Like you getting that promotion, I don't know, maybe that's outside your control. You getting that job, maybe it's a bit outside your control. So what I've done more so over the past couple of years, BB, as opposed to when I was 18 or 20, is I set more activity goals now as opposed to like outcome.
Like process.
Yeah,
almost.
like process goals, all kind of, again, boring talk. And my wife's like, oh, what do you, like, be fun, Callum. But again, for me, I can control, I would rather set goals that I can absolutely control.
Yep.
So what that might mean is, just practically speaking, I might want a promotion in my job.
Yep.
That's not the goal. What are the things that are going to lead me there? It might be rocking up on time. It might be proactively helping a bunch of different teams. Number of calls per day.
How many fresh emails are you sending out?
Yeah, that's stuff like that. So activity goals, I find, just releases the anxiety of not really knowing what the result is, and maybe that paralyzes young adults to set goals because they're like, geez,
I might fail.
But if you set activity goals and start with something you can absolutely win at, maybe you'll be more likely to have a crack at it and be proud of it. Because ultimately, again, you hear this from anyone that's had success. If you do the right activity for long enough, it will lead to the right results you want. You just need to get counsel maybe on what those activity goals are.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then I suppose, how do you search for that wise counsel? Like, is that, I know it's not necessarily linked to personal vision, but like how would you go about finding someone that could like lead you or do you have anyone at the moment that's like leading you in certain areas, or if people out there like really want to set goals but they need that counsel, how would they go about getting it?
Well, I think you did it really well. Like, obviously many wouldn't know this, but you would make it really easy for me to catch up with you. Like, I was working in the Valley, in a corporate job, in the Valley, just to clarify. And you would sort of say, hey, like, I'll come to you at lunch. Like, when's your lunch break? I was like, okay, well, it's 12 to 1, and you would make it easy for me to just sit down with you and kind of guide you in certain areas. So for me, it was Pastor George back when I was 20. I didn't kind of actively seek him out. I just saw, I guess, an area that he was really strong in. So this is how I honestly got saved, which is a little bit crazy in a sense.
You
Like,
can go there.
oh yeah, yeah. That's the beautiful thing about Kingdom Life podcast is that we can talk about that. But essentially, I rocked up to City Point Church and I saw Pastor George speaking from stage, and I saw him speaking with such confidence, and he was delivering words of knowledge, and I was like I feel like public speaking is a gift on my life. So to see someone like do it so well, I was attracted to that, right?
Yeah.
And that drew me in to want to learn about the Bible. That drew me in to want to learn about this church thing.
Yeah.
And naturally, he then became someone that I sought a lot of counsel from a Christian standpoint.
Yeah, but you were proactive, and I think that's probably what we want the listeners or watchers to get across, is that like oftentimes it's a proactive, like you seek someone out or you search someone out who's probably got strengths in certain areas or like things that you admire or they model things well. Like that's the idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And you did that. Like you sort of kind of, I can't remember who made the first move at 15 when you were sorting me out for a life group, but yeah, you just kept kind of making it easy for us to catch up, and it was also enjoyable. I think we clicked, like,
probably
for those out there, like we're clearly quite process driven. You know, we're not going to talk about a whole bunch of different stuff. Like we're clearly heading in a specific direction here with this podcast. So we clicked.
And naturally, talking about this for 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and George and I clicked in that sense too, and him and I went on a journey. But nowadays, I've got Pastor Josh that speaks, Pastor Josh and Bonnie that speak into Neil and my life, and we've got business people that speak into our life. And again, we'll naturally look to seek it out and sort of fit in with their schedule. Yeah.
Cool. No, that's awesome. And I think if there was just, you know, as we kind of wrap up pretty soon, like if there was just one piece of gold or, you know, one thing you just wanted people to take away from today, what would that one thing be, or that one piece of gold that they could really apply in relation to personal vision or anything we discussed?
Well, I think that if you're genuinely serious as a young adult, to get clarity on where your life's going to be in 5 or 10 years' time, to help influence the decisions now, you're probably going to have to dip into your pocket. Like time and money. It's going to take time and money for you to get into a different environment whereby you're away from distractions. And I know that people want to jump to a goal. They want to jump to like something they can get to, but I would jump to kind of some quiet time or some time away from your routine. And whatever that might be. I'm quite fortunate that it's kind of lended to me every 3 or 4 weeks. I'm on a plane through work, and you know, every 3 or 4 months, Neil and I are away at some kind of conference where we take time out. But I think ultimately, where you can differentiate yourself, that's how I think. How can I get ahead of the pack? As a young adult, very few would actually take time and money to get away from the normal routine, to actually think about, hey, what does life look like in 1, 5, and 10 years' time? And if you do that, you're setting yourself well apart from the rest. And you'll find that you procrastinate less because you've all of a sudden got, this decision now really does affect what I want my life to look like in 10 years' time, whether it be my career, my health, my relationship with God. So the more clarity you got on the end result, the better decisions you'll make here and now. So I don't know whether that...
100%. No, that's awesome. And thanks so much for your time today. We definitely value it. We know you have heaps on with your life. And you've been such a blessing to me and to so many others. So with all that, we might wrap it up. And we'll see you guys next time in episode 4. Bye.